and it's 11 o'clock in the morning. Long day of drinking ahead of you, so don't give me any bitching tomorrow morning. I will not be hungover. I'm drinking a zombie for breakfast too. Actually, is this on? No. There it is.
Is this thing on?
You just gotta press a little button. Oh, okay. Where are we? Let's start. The beginning. It's hard to talk sometimes after doing those aloha's. I've been doing it for 2 weeks. We were here last week. I was like, in 1973, you all remember 1973.
Yeah.
In 1973, I was 17 years old, and I had already started my illustrious career in low-level show business. I'm a keyboard player. I started playing in bands, professionally, in bars, when I was 15 years old, and I never stopped. But on this one particular night, I was playing a high school prom with my band at a place called Kowloon. You can probably figure where this is going. So after the party ended, and the owners there, the Wong family, lovely folks, they've owned it since 1947, it's still open, and they brought the band downstairs to give us some food and drink, and a couple of poo-poo platters, and in front of me, the 17-year-old, they put the volcano ball, which I put a straw into. It was like 3 feet long, and had a sip, had another, told the other guys in the band, who were all over 21 by the way, that they were going to have to get their own goddamn drink on, because I was going to drink it all, and it was so good I declared that I'm going to drink one of these every day for the rest of my life. And you know what? 40 some odd years later, I've been pretty goddamn successful. And that's why I am here to tell you the story of Tiki, the rise, the fall, the resurrection, and the redemption. Let's start in the beginning. Woo! Let's see if this thing's on. Yes, it is. First of all, we'd like to thank our wonderful sponsors today, Pierre Ferrand Company and their Plantation Rum. You can see the lovely spirits right here in front of you, and of course you're drinking them right now. We'll talk about that zombie in a little bit. But thanks to them for sponsoring. I have worked with Plantation now for 8 years in all sorts of places all around the country and over in Europe as well. And they're wonderful people to work for, and I love their spirits, and they're priced right too. We really like that. As a bar manager and looking at cost of goods, I go, yeah, Plantation. Thanks. $17 for that original dark? Yeah, okay. Cool. All right. This is the very beginning. This is the prologue to this song. So in 1898, Hawaii, the Kingdom of Hawaii, became an American territory. And within 10 years, actually a little less, Hawaii mania swept the United States. A lot of it was in the form of music. 78 RPM shellac records of this hamahole music and other assorted styles from Hawaii became huge, especially on college campuses. The ukulele became the best-selling instrument in the United States. All this sheet music here that of this type of music that people were buying in droves, big bestsellers, and it just kind of continued on. That lap steel guitar made its way into Western swing music about 10 years later, and just the influence of this was just all throughout. So, that's the prologue. Let's get to the meat. But why we're all sitting here today is due to this person right here. Now, his name is Ernest Raymond Beaumont Gant. He was a Cajun from Mejia, Texas. And his grandfather was a wildcatter. Now, a wildcatter, if you're not familiar with it, is somebody that, especially in the early 20th century, would find oil, and he was in Texas and Louisiana, find oil. They had these little oil wells, and they would go and just stick them into people's property. Hey, can I see if there's oil here? And then if there was, they would buy the property and then sell it to somebody like a John D. Rockefeller or some oil baron who would buy it at a higher cost than they bought for it. So his grandfather became very, very wealthy. And in 1925, Ernest was offered by his grandfather the opportunity to go to college, because he had money earmarked for him to go to college, or he could go to a different type of college, and that would be to take that money and travel around the world. So Ernest, being an intelligent young man, and of course 1925, Prohibition had been already going on for 6 years in the United States, so he said, yeah, I think I'll leave the country and I'll go to some places where I can get a goddamn drink. We now know Ernest as, you can do Don the Beachcomber. Don the Beachcomber started the first tropical bar and created the basis of all these drinks that we enjoy now, and created that zombie you're doing right now. So Don took off, and his first stop was Cuba. He left from the port of New Orleans, and he was not that far away. He went there, and he had the daiquiri. Now I know people pronounce it daiquiri these days. That was something that started in the 1960s, but the original word is daiquiri. It was a town in Cuba where the first party was thrown, where a guy named William Jennings had he was an American industrialist. He had a group of American iron ore investors from a company in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And they all got together in this town of Daiquiri, and he served them the daiquiri. Daiquiri was a village off of a town called Santiago de Cuba. And in Santiago de Cuba in 1865, a guy named Facundo Barcadi started a rum distillery. I think you know who that is, or his descendants would say. So he had these daiquiris, and he went to Sloppy Joe's in Havana, which was the premier bar for mojitos and presidentes and daiquiris and other Cubano drinks, and these are all bottles of rum on here. And these would have been Bacardi, because that was the main spirit of the island. This place got closed by Fidel Castro in 1960, and they boarded it up. It was reopened about 10 years ago, and it was completely intact. Nobody had even gone in the place. Of course, it was rather dusty, but it is now reopened again. And I have not been down there, but my friend Beachbone Murray has, and he says it's quite spectacular. It is like walking into a castle. It's exactly the same. So Don, we'll just call him Don now as Ernest. That's too much. He actually changed his name legally to Don Beach in the 1950s. So from there he went to Jamaica. And Jamaica was really where it happened for Don. He had a planter's punch. And that was his jam. Basically, every drink he ever created was a riff on the planter's punch. He loved that drink. And it's really just a daiquiri made with Jamaican rum. You like that funk, you like that hogo. And damn it, he got it. So from there, he traveled around. He didn't write a diary or anything, but we know his diary from the rums that he chose. And he had a really amazing palate. He could identify these, and he thought about how to combine them into different, form new, interesting flavors from there. But we know he went to Haiti. We know that he went down here to British Guiana, where he went to the Demerara Valley, had Demerara rum. We know he went to Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados, all over here. I guess I've got a little thing here going. Yeah, does it work on that screen? Not very well. Guadeloupe and Martinique over here, where he had rum agricole, and the Virgin Islands, which at the time it's U.S. here, but those were Dutch islands, and St. Croix, where St. Croix rum, if you ever look in old cocktail books from the early part of the 20th century, late 19th century, you'll find just listening to St. Croix rum in different recipes. And then he traveled over into Panama, through the Panama Canal, and made his way over to Oceania. He spent a lot of time in French Polynesia, of course in Tahiti, and various islands around the Oceania there, French Polynesia, etc. He did go to New Zealand and Australia, but where he really had his epiphany on all these drinks was in the Philippines. So he went to Manila, and he discovered that the street vendors there were mixing all different kinds of fruit juices together. He had never seen that before. As an American, he thought, you have orange juice or apple juice in the morning. That's about it, or something like that. But in here, we have street vendors that are mixing up concoctions with mango, with guava, with coconut, with pineapple, with calamansi, with all sorts of different fruit that were tropical fruits. And he had never had anything like that, and it started his mind thinking, what if I took these different fruits and some of these different rums and some of the syrups that he had encountered, like falernum down in Trinidad and Barbados. Falernum, by the way, was originally concocted for teething babies. If your baby was having tooth problems, then you would just take a little swab of it and put it on the kid's tooth, and the baby would stop crying. And I know that actually works for me when I start drinking falernum too. But that's the roots of the falernum, and how it turned into being used as a sweetener is thanks to Don the Beachcomber. Orgeat was the other, the almond syrup that he encountered in Martinique, Guadeloupe, in the French West Indies. So he started thinking all about that. He went to Hawaii over here, and that's where he ran out of money finally. And he had been collecting all sorts of flotsam and jetsam while he was in Southeast Asia and the various islands, and he brought that back because when he ran out of money, he just had enough to get to Los Angeles. So he went to LA and he set up shop as a bootlegger, and he got a job in Chinatown working in Chinese restaurants down there, usually as a dishwasher, busboy, sometimes as a waiter. In the interim, he was starting to meet all these sort of Hollywood celebrities and directors and producers, etc., and he's selling liquor to them. And he had all this stuff that he had been collecting, and they were making all these Tarzan movies and jungle epics like that at the time in Hollywood in the early 1930s. So he had all this stuff and he started renting it out to them and getting in with all these people, befriending a lot of movie stars. Charlie Chaplin was a good friend of his, Joan Crawford, Cary Grant, people like that in the early 1930s, and he knew all these producers. And in 1933, well, his bootlegging business ends because Prohibition comes. Bartenders poised for drinker's rush, just like a Friday shift, right? So he said to himself as this was leading up, he said, I've got to do something to cash in on this, and what he did. So December 5th, 1933, on January 14th of 1934, he opened, it was originally called Don's Cafe, and this was the very first tropical restaurant in the mainland United States. Well, actually Hawaii wasn't a state at that point, but this was on McCadden Place, which is it's a little side street between Hollywood Boulevard and Sunset Boulevard, west of Vine Street, in that area of Hollywood. And it was a huge, huge hit. Lines down the street every night. It was very small. There were like 5 seats at the bar, 6 seats at the bar, and then two tops, a couple of 4 tops. Very small place. But the deal was, you have to remember that nobody had ever had a drink like this. Anytime, anywhere, ever. Before Prohibition, it was the golden age of the cocktail with Manhattans and martinis and martinez and et cetera, et cetera. And then during Prohibition, if you went to Paris or London or something like that, you could get some drinks, or in Cuba or South America in general. But it was just like bootleg gin and whiskey that might have been smuggled in from Canada, a lot of Canadian clubs, that type of thing. And when there was any rum that could come in back as well with rum runners, as they had done back during the Revolutionary War. But these drinks were completely original, and let's look at it this way. So people were drinking bathtub gin for the most part in Prohibition. So gin was like, nah, we're done with that. Whiskey, after Prohibition ends, there really is no whiskey in the United States, because what whiskey was being made during Prohibition was medicinal. You went to a pharmacy and you got a prescription, or your doctor gave you a prescription for whiskey. I had one of those actually in the 70s, because you couldn't buy liquor on Sundays, so I got a prescription so I could buy liquor on Sundays at the drugstore. That was pretty good. That was smart. And rum. rum had gone out of favor basically in the late 1700s. It was replaced by American whiskey, rye whiskey originally, and then bourbon in the 1800s. And Geneva was popular, and then I went out of favor as London Dry Gin came in. Brandy went out of favor in the mid-1800s. So it was really, nobody had drank rum, and here it was back because it was available, came from the Caribbean, and it was dirt cheap. And it was plentiful. There's all these different islands and countries down there that made it in South America as well. So you combine that with all these syrups and fruit beverages that nobody had ever had before, and it's a phenomenal. It's just phenomenal. People are coming from all around. It gets written up in some newspapers, but the word gets around about it. So let's look at Don. He becomes so popular, he moves down the street, he gets a bigger place, 3 years later, same on McCadden Place, and he has created this whole amazing list of cocktails in these early years here. Many of them you probably have: the Shark's Tooth, the QB Cooler, the Pie Eye, the Missionary's Downfall, the Cobra's Fang, the Nui Nui, the Test Pilot, the Vicious Virgin, the Navy Grog, the Pearl Diver, Beachcomber's Gold, Lapu Lapu, Dr. Funk of Tahiti, the Donga Punch, 3 Dots and a Dash, and the Rum Barrel. All classics. And Don was a guy that he always was tweaking his cocktails, and tinkering and changing recipes around, and changing rums and stuff like that as new things became available. But the biggest tweak that he ever did was due to this guy here, Fred Waring. Fred Waring was a big band leader, Fred Waring and his Pennsylvanians. And he created in 1937 the Waring Blender. And Don, it was made to vegetable juices or cut up vegetables or cut up meat, anything. But Don said, oh, I can make drinks with this. He's always thinking, right? So he discovers that he can get a cocktail in there, and if he just does a flash blend, 5 seconds with ice, he has perfect chilling and perfect dilution in it. So this is the start of this. He starts doing this with all these drinks, and it's just like, that was it. I used to go to this restaurant in Somerville, Mass. called Ye Village, and every drink, and people were buying all these drinks, and the blender was really fucked up, and it would just go, and I thought that's why they call it Ye Village, because that's the sound you heard. Like, you got a headache from that, and the drinks were really bad too, but it didn't stop me from drinking them, did it? But, Fred, so the Zombie, which you're drinking right now, was Don's ultimate concoction and creation. And this is what you have today: 1.5 ounces of Plantation 3-Star, 1.5 ounces of the Plantation Original Dark, 1 ounce of the Plantation Oh Fuck That's Delicious. You guys know that story, right? You know that story? So they were working on it over there, David Wondrich and Alexander Gabriel from Plantation, and Scotty Shooter from Dirty Dick, and Martin Kate from Smoker's Cove, and of course Beachcomber Perry, and Paul from London. They were all working on it, and it was getting good. It was getting good, making a blend of all these different rums that Alexander had brought over that were in the Plantation aging space. And Wondrich said, oh, we haven't put any that Bayesian rum in here. Let's put like 2 ounces of of that. Get that Barbados barrel in here, put that in. Stirred it all up and took a sip. Oh fuck, that's delicious. Mm-hmm. And Alexander goes, yes, that is the name of the rum. and Wondrich said, how can you call it that? And then they finally settled on OFTD, which actually they say is old-fashioned traditional dark, but now you all know what it really stands for. You may have already, but now I'm just affirming that for you. So 6 ounces of crushed ice. Oh yeah, I forgot there's a falernum and white grapefruit juice and cinnamon syrup. So the white grapefruit juice and cinnamon syrup is known as Don's Mix. So when Beachbum Berry was trying to figure out what the recipe was on this, because Don the Beachcomber never wanted anybody to know how to make his cocktails and steal them from him, so he steamed the labels off all the bottles. And he wrote everything in code. He just put numbers on the bottles. And his bartenders and he only hired Filipinos to be bartenders. He said, that's the people that had all of these great concoctions in the Philippines, so I'll put all my faith in them. And there was no bar in his restaurant. When you walk in there, you would see a bar, the seats in front of it, and the first thing you would notice is there's no booze, and there's nobody behind the bar. Anybody here been to the Mai Kai in Washington? I know it's closed right now, but okay. So the same deal there at the Mall Kai bar. You go in, there's no booze, and there's no bartenders. So what Don did and what they did at the Mai Kai is it's all done in the back, and it's a line, just like in a kitchen. So you have the first person that is pouring the spirits, the second person is doing whatever, bitters and juices and things like that. Third person is doing the ice and shaking or flash blending or stirring. And the last person is doing the garnishing, and then they give it out to the server who then brings it out to the guests. And that was the way he did it. And the Mai Kai also did that, and I took a tour one time at Tiki by the Sea, as a matter of fact, down there a couple of years ago, and it's all still set up like that, with all the original recipes hanging up, and everything's in code. But Jeff could never figure out what the Don's mix was, and he ended up meeting a guy. He traced it to a company that made syrups in Inglewood, California, and he found the gentleman that had run the place, who was now retired, and he was like, what was the Don's mix? Like, I said, cinnamon. And he went through some papers. It took him a couple of days, and he called Jeff and said, oh, white grapefruit juice. So 2 parts grapefruit to 1 part cinnamon is the Don's mix. And when he finally figured that out, he was actually able to make one at home, and he had Dr. Cocktail and said, hey, have a few of them, and the bum discovered the reason for Don's greatest marketing scheme was to write, sorry, only 2 per customer on the menu. And people were crazy. They wanted that third one really bad. You know, to seek permission is to seek denial. And they'd go outside and have a cigarette and then come back in and go, hey, I have a zombie. You've already been in here, don't try that shit on us. But 2 was pretty good for Jeff. Dr. Cocktail, however, continued on. But you've got 4 ounces of rum in here. And, you know, in the original recipe, it was 151. That 1 ounce of 151 that was in it that was the ass kicker. So here we are with the plantation products here. Thank you very much, folks. So the zombie became like really famous, but it was just available in 1 bar in Los Angeles. How did it become really famous? Well, a guy named Monty Proser, who owned a restaurant on Broadway in New York City, went over. He read about this in the newspaper. He flew out to LA and went to the Beachcomber, and was so impressed. He came back, renamed his own bar Monty Proser's Beachcomber, home of the zombie. Don doesn't know anything about this. He's not reading New York newspapers. This guy just comes and does it. There's no real copyright violation or anything. There weren't that many lawyers that were doing stuff like this at the time. So it's big there. But remember, Don has steamed the labels off all the bottles, and nobody knows how to make it except the 4 people that work for him. And they don't even know what number 7 and number 11 and all these other numbers are. So how did he do it? Well, he just figured it had 151 rum in it because it was really strong, and kind of like tried to reverse engineer it. We don't know how really successful he was. I'm old, but I was not alive in 1939 when he did this. And he also then opened it at the New York World's Fair in 1939-1940, which was a huge, huge event at the time. And he had Monty Proser's Zombie restaurant on the Midway, so thousands and thousands of people coming from all over the country and the world get to have this zombie. So the zombie becomes a really famous drink. Nobody knows how to make it, but it starts showing up on menus all over the country. I collect old cocktail menus or even just look at them on eBay and stuff like that to relax. And if you look at a lot of the menus from the 40s and 50s, you will see a zombie. It's the only sort of tropical drink that ends up on all these different menus. Nobody knew how to make it. But I guess they did a good job. They made it so it was only 2 per customer. So the zombie and everything's getting out of out in the world now, by 1940. But let's look at another guy. Oh yes, I forgot, that's the matchbook. Now the matchbook is interesting because it has all the icons that come to represent tropical restaurants and drinks for the next like 50 years. And it's the witch doctor with the skull, the monkey skull usually, and the wahine and the drunken sailor. And you would see these on menus for 40, 50 years, just in some sort of permutation there. But this guy is the next big one in the story here, in the holy trinity of tropical drink makers. This is Victor Jules Bergeron. Victor was he was not a Cajun like Don the Beachcomber, but he was a French Canadian, and he lived in Oakland, California. And he heard about this Don the Beachcomber, so he went down to Los Angeles and he liked what he saw. He said, "This is cool." Then he went to Cuba, and he had some daiquiris, and that was his. He fell in love with that. That was his drink from then on. So he said, "Well, I need a new name and a character to do this because I want to do this in Oakland." So he renamed himself Trader Vic, and Trader Vic was a very successful gentleman, in fact. And he had a little barbecue place in Oakland called Hinky Dinks, and he thought, well, you know, why don't I just serve these drinks? He started working on some of these drinks. So Trader Vic at Hinky Dinks. This is the matchbook from 1934, and he started getting a lot of fans coming in for these drinks. Again, nobody had ever had anything like this, especially if you live in the Bay Area. You're not going to just travel to LA to have a drink, so they're doing it here, and people were loving it. And he becomes this whole raconteur. Vic was a really, really interesting guy. I never met him. I know his granddaughter, who has supplied some of these photos. I worked with her at Tiki Oasis out in California. Eve Bergeron is her name, and she runs like all the mail order stuff and everything. If you buy anything from Trader Vic's. But Vic was, he was a bigger than life character. One of his favorite things to do to kind of fuck with people was he would like to sit at the table and talk to guests, and he'd have a little penknife and a piece of wood, big Whitland, sitting there, and talking to people, and then all of a sudden he would just take the penknife and slam into his calf. Like that. And people would scream and faint and shout, ah! And he would laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh because Vic had a wooden leg. He had lost his leg to tuberculosis when he was about 12 years old, and he just thought it was really funny. That's the kind of guy he was. He wrote about it in his autobiography, and his granddaughter did tell me that it was true. So he started this whole chain of restaurants, Trader Vic's, with that first one up in Oakland, and he was a really good businessman, and he started franchising his restaurants out. He got a deal with the Hilton hotels, and soon every Hilton hotel in the United States, in the major cities, had a Trader Vic's in the basement. Tiki bars were always in the basement because you didn't want to look out the window and see rain or snow or sleet or anything like that because it would fuck up your fantasy world. Yes?
Yeah, I've been to the one the farmhouse, Hilton, like the basement.
Yep.
Four managers just one house too.
Yeah, that one, I think that one closed in the mid-90s. That was open for a long, long time in Chicago. So here, this was the original menu that he had at the Bamboo Room. He had a mojito and a rum cow and a Presidente. He called it a Barbados Red Rum Swizzle. We would know that was a Queen's Park Swizzle now. Maui Fizz Gin and Schweppes Tonic. Pisco Punch, he was a big Pisco fan. The Raffles Bar Sling, or the Singapore Sling, which, have you ever been to Singapore? Did you have a Singapore Sling at the Raffles Hotel? Worst drink you ever had in your life, right? This is my trip tip for the day. If you go to Singapore, don't drink the fucking Singapore Sling. It sucks. They come in big jars and they just pour them out. You know, like oh, here comes another sucker, and here you go, little buddy. And they just go, oh, and they're just, haha, we have your money now anyway. We don't care what you say about us. Tell it to every Tiki class you do. Fucking asshole. So you've been warned. All right, so Trader Vic, your host at Hinky Dinks, and then here he is in the bar. There's a beautiful bar there, and he is a very happy man there holding some, something that I can't read the label. I've been trying to read that label for the 8 years I've been doing these things, but it never works. Maybe this time. Selling booze by the bottle, very progressive. I guess you could do that in California back then. And he's got some fine fabric here, and he did write a bartender's guide. Don, taking the labels off the bottles. Vic is like, fuck it, I'm gonna make some money as an author. So, and he wrote about 8 books in his lifetime. But he created a drink called the Mai Tai, and that is what you've just been served. I'm going to do a quick quality test here because my throat's dry anyway. That's really good. Mai Tai. The Mai Tai became Vic's most famous drink, and now probably the most famous tropical cocktail set. It's probably the most famous one. It's my litmus test. It's always been my litmus test anytime I would go into a tropical restaurant, starting in the 1970s. I'll have a Mai Tai, and if it really sucked, I would just drink beer. But the drink that Hawaii made famous, well, this drink was created in Oakland, California in 1944. So how did it get famous in Hawaii? Well, how did it get to Hawaii? Well, it's easy. It got there by boat. The Maston Line Hotels and the Royal Hawaiian Hotel in Honolulu. So Vic actually was the very first cocktail consultant. He got hired by this boat line, cruise ship, that took people from San Francisco to Honolulu on a couple of times a week and back again. They didn't just leave them there. He created the cocktails and the food for the boat and also for the hotel, because people would stay at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel. You saw the Royal Hawaiian down the road here yesterday, but that's, I don't know if that was actually, if they're the same ownership or not. Could very well be, but the Royal Hawaiian is actually still there in Honolulu. They served his Mai Tai for many years as it was originally created, and then sometime in the 60s, they changed the recipe around and became the most bastardized version of the Mai Tai. They call it the Royal Hawaiian one. I tend to find it, I call it the Chinese restaurant Mai Tai, because that was what you would always get in these places.
I heard that Trader Vic actually helped develop that shitty recipe to make it more palatable for tourists. Do you know if that's true?
I don't know if that's true. I don't believe that it is, actually.
I can't find out.
Yeah. So what it is so Mai Tai, what you're drinking right now is so we've got actually we've got the Zekama and the original dark. Zekama is their Jamaican. Do we have a bottle of that here? No, oh yeah, there it is right here. And then we've added agua prata, cachaça. Because when Vic worked it out, I'll tell you the story in a minute, but the whole story of the Mai Tai. But they added an ounce of orange juice and an ounce of pineapple juice. And that's the version that and they sell the orgeat in it, and the orange curacao, but the rum and just got added to these other fruit juices. So, I had a Mai Tai on a restaurant menu that I did a couple of years ago, and somebody on Yelp said, oh, I had the Mai Tai, but it was missing that refreshing pineapple juice that makes it such a memorable drink. I said, fuck you. But, Yelp, fuck yourself. But it is what people think of, yes?
Yes, this is absolutely true, because I started in the hospitality industry back in Europe and Estonia in 2005.
Okay.
And that's exactly what the Mai Tai was.
Right.
OJ, pineapple, all those things.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Well, you have this, talk about the Singapore Sling, and you have the pre-70s original Singapore Sling, the disco era, so during that 70s, 80s.
I remember
like
those.
a lot of drinks are bastardized
Right.
with all this fruit juice. Do you think that was the big effect on that? Was that whole kind of American bar scene where it's fruit juice and fear of flavor and
Yeah, basically everything from starting in the 70s really gets a lot sweeter than it ever had been. Americans have a total sweet tooth. They don't like anything that's bitter. It's just everything is sugar and salt.
Well, definitely, I've been in seminars where they talk about you have prohibition and post-prohibition. Everyone's just drinking sodas and tea and juices, so the American palate went to more sweeter version of drinks.
Right, and fast food is a big.
Okay.
Because like McDonald's, it's just sugar. What Subway, the rolls are all,
Nah,
buns are all sugar.
it's all French cuisine, butter, sugar, and eggs.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
The Holy Trinity.
So yeah, that's basically what happened. But fortunately, we're at a point now that we've gone back to these original recipes. Thanks to Jeff Beachbum-Berry, by the way, for finding all of this, and we'll get to that story momentarily here. But let's travel on to what we're drinking. Sambuca, and here comes the Plantation Original Dark and Agua. The very first Tiki by the Sea. Back in 2014, we did experiments with using cachaça versus agricole from Martinique or Guadeloupe, and I did a Donga punch using it, and everybody just flipped out over it, compared to the Clement that we used. It's a short question instead of the brand name, but the rum agricole that we use for Martinique, but it works so well in a Mai Tai. The Amburana is also quite nice. But I usually go to the straight stuff like this, and I love that. Everybody like this drink?
Incredible.
All right.
What are the specs of the different rums? And cachaça? Did you see that? already?
Half and one of the aqua, and then a half ounce of the Ferrand dry curacao, and 1 ounce of lime juice, and quarter on the orgeat and simple.
So, is that the original spec from
Trader
the
Vic's.
bar? Like
Well,
that
the original.
that should be canon, I guess.
2017, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, let's just go through it. Hold on, because we got. So there's the lime and there's the coconut. There's the dry curacao and the orgeat. So Trader Vic, if you look through his recipes, which you can do on the Total Tiki app, which you should have on your phone or tablet. If you don't, you should get it from the App Store or the Android store. He used orgeat in almost all of his sours, so he would mix it either with lemon juice, or with lime juice, or with orange juice, or some combination of the above. Again, he came from a French-Canadian family. His mother used it in baking and sweetening in a lot of her cooking, so that was why he started using that in his drinks, and it's in quite a few of them. And then he had rock candy syrup, which we used, I use at home. Trader Vic's sells rock candy syrup that you can get through their website. And it's a little different than simple syrup. It has more of vanilla overtones to it, and it's a little more viscous. But this is rock candy, and they just melt that down to make the syrup. And here's the, I get carried away with this animation stuff, don't mind me. I drink when I do these things. Oh, that looks really good. But and they've gone back to that's the original label, which they just brought back very recently on all of their stuff. So there's the drink itself. Right now, that's how they serve it. That's the glassware that they use. And the two Trader Vic's that are left in the United States, that's Emeryville, California, next to Oakland, and in Atlanta, Georgia. And then there's Trader Vic's. There's 9 of them in Dubai, and there's one in Tokyo, which is, and it's never been changed in 1964. It's perfection. There's one in Bangkok, there's one in London, there's one in Munich, there's one in Amman, Jordan, there's a couple more in various United Arab Emirates locations, and I think that's about the whole list. But the one in London is great, by the way. If you're over there, go to that one. All right, so World War II comes and puts a dampening on the whole, on everything in life. And those tiki bars are really, they're doing okay. They have rum, which is good because whiskey is now not being produced because they're using it to make bombs and other assorted things for the war effort. And gin is kind of coming back a little bit. But whiskey now is what they would call a blended whiskey, which is mostly a neutral grain spirit with just a tiny amount of actual whiskey in it, kind of like drinking misto from Mexico, which is what I drank for like 25 years. I was in Mexico in like 1994 for the first time, and I was with the woman from the record company. It was like 2 glasses in front of me. Drink the amber one, let's drink the red one. I took a sip of the amber one. I said, wow, what the fuck is this? She said, El Tesoro de Don Felipe. I said, what the fuck is El Tesoro de Don Felipe? She goes, that's tequila, you idiot. I said, what have I been drinking for 25 years? And she said, oh, you know, vodka with a little agave in it. We call it misto, you call it Bravo. I said, oh, I'm going to drink that shit again. That's the story of that one. But all of a sudden, the war is over and people are happy, and more and more tropical restaurants started opening. This is the Trader Vic's in Boston. I used to hang out there when I was a young man. And let's see, we got the Hollywood Tropics in Hollywood, and we've got the wahinis here, and the coconuts and the palm trees, the tropics in Chicago, Ruby Foos in Providence, Rhode Island. Hey, Providence, yeah, there you go. There was also one in Boston, also one in New York. There were a bunch of those around, and again, just being lazy, sitting around on the beach, drinking all day, watching the planes go by. Not for me, I'm just happy. This says douchebag, that is cooking. And the book Kon-Tiki came out. So anybody know what Kon-Tiki is all about? Yeah, so it was this Norwegian explorer, scientist, Thor Heyerdahl, had this theory that the people of South America had actually come from Polynesia, and they had taken rafts over. And a lot of people said, nah, that couldn't happen, that's too far of a distance. So Thor built a raft and got a crew of, I think it was 9 people, and they went on, they did it backwards. They left from Lima, Peru, and they got to Cook's Islands, and proved that it could be done. This was a huge best-selling book at the time. This is 1948, and there was a documentary film about it, which I've seen that on YouTube if you want to see him at work here. But one of his big finds on that was Easter Island, and people were just stunned by this stuff. Hey, come back, Easter Island. Well, you know what it looks like. So they found all these moais that were on this island in the middle of, actually closer to Chile than anything in Polynesia. So they realized that this culture had got there, lived there, built these icons there, and they evidently continued on. So the native people of at least Western South America, which was all Peru for many centuries, I guess, after the Spanish got there. But now it's all the Peru, Chile, and Bolivia, blah blah blah. But that was proof of that, and it intrigued a lot of people at the time. But all this stuff continues on. Where was that? Those guys. They're beautiful, aren't they? Yeah, so then there was a Broadway show called South Pacific, and that was a huge hit. They made a movie out of it, so all this South Pacific mania is building up. Steve Crane, the third part of the holy trinity of Tiki folks that open restaurants, he opens the first really like white tablecloth Tiki bar, the Luau on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills.
So you keep all those restaurants and bars you talked before, you use the word tropical. Do you think tropical and tiki is interchangeable? Is there a difference? Is that just your verbiage of a tiki bar, or just tropical is tiki?
Yeah. Well, they're basically tropical drinks. The Caribbean is the tropics. Oceania, Polynesia is tropics. To me, it's all latitude 29.
I've just never heard people call, this is a tropical bar. I never heard people say, it's a tiki bar, not a tropical bar.
Yeah, I mean,
I was wondering the term.
The term tiki bar really is fairly new. That comes out of the 90s. I'll talk about that when we get there. But that was when Otto von Stroheim and Jeff Berry and Sven Kirsten started digging up all this old stuff. They were just referring to it by that
So
word.
Trader Vic and Don Beachcomber, the tropical bar that they opened.
A tropical restaurant,
They
yeah.
called it a tropical.
And Don called his
Okay.
drinks rum rhapsodies.
Okay.
He didn't call them tiki drinks, rum rhapsodies. Very good term. Steve Crane, too. Steve Crane opened the Luau. Very, very influential place. Beach Bum Berry grew up in Los Angeles. He would go there with his parents from time to time. And when it reopened briefly in 2009, he did the cocktail menu there. Where are we? Oh yeah, so there's movies that start happening, film noir, this Hell's Half Acre filmed in Honolulu. And this one where you start seeing these bars in a lot of movies. This is one called the Blue Gardenia, film noir. Raymond Burr and Baxter there has got a little poison got put into that fog cutter there. It's not going to end well. And, this music started. Oh, yeah. Hey, we can't hear the music again. Oh, there you are. We lost the connection again. I think this is where it happened last week too. Yeah. So we just put it back into the speaker. Yeah, okay. Technical difficulties. Been the story of my life in the last 2 weeks. There we go. Les Baxter was a composer, arranger, had a deal with Capitol Records. He wanted to write film music, and he actually ended up scoring a lot of movies, especially low-budget American international pictures stuff, zombie movies and gladiator movies and other things. But he took this mixed jazz with all sorts of Latin and African and Asian, South Asian percussion and stuff, and created this music out of orchestral music and jazz all together, created something called Exotica, which became extremely popular as the decade went on. This guy, Walt Disney, that's who this guy is, and he opened the Tiki room in Disneyland, and that was quite phenomenal. Let's see, I think we got the theme song here. Let's see if the music still plays. Everybody in the Tiki room, in the Tiki room. All the drinks are free, and you're fucking hammered in the Tiki motherfucking Tiki room. Yeah. Tiki room is still open, but I did yell motherfucker when I rode that ride at one point, but it's a beautiful thing. So, all this stuff is entering the American consciousness. So what about our friend Don the Beachcomber? We haven't heard from him in a while, have we? Well, Don got married in the 30s and made his wife his business partner. And then when she divorced him, she got the whole chain. So he was forbidden to open a Don the Beachcomber in the United States. Hawaii was not in the United States, so he moved over to Honolulu and opened Don's Hawaiian Village in 1954, which was quite beautiful. That's the cover of the menu. Here is the big A-frame, nice bar inside. And when I talk to bartenders and when we're doing this, I like to point out a few things here. I like to point out the before sundown menu, or day drinking, as we call it now. This is Don the Beachcomber's idea of day drinking. Beachcomber's rum barrel serves 2. Half a barrel of rum, limit of 2 per person. Let's see, Don's own planters, limit of 2 per person. Kill Devil, okay. QB cooler, limit of 2. Test pilot, Don recommends no more than 2. The zombie, Don will not serve more than 2 to each person. So this is day drinking, right? You're fucking hammered by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But don't worry, because there's an after sundown and a much later menu too. And if you really get hungry, you can have monkey on a stick. So good. Yeah. So that was Don's menu over there, and I guess some people did actually get the much later, which is like coffee drinks, like the Kona coffee grog, and what's the other one? The Skull and Bones. Cobra's Fang is on there. $1.10. That was a good price for that hot buttered rum. And the 151 Swizzle is a limit of 3. I guess he figured if you've made it that far, you're gonna be good to go to have one more. All right. So Don also was the first person to have a private dining room. It was in a banyan tree, and this is much further off the ground than you're seeing in this, but you would climb a rope ladder up to it, and it would serve up to like 4 people in there. You can have a little
Get trashed.
yeah.
That's not work safe. Like.
No, I don't think so.
No waivers,
You could just slide down.
We just slither down the side of the building.
Yeah, right. Or just fall off.
we saunter down.
I think he may have had pillows all around it so that if you just fell off. Yeah. I'm sorry, Don limits, maybe he doesn't limit 3 per customer on that one. But that was a beautiful place, and that remained open until Don died in 1989. It closed shortly thereafter that. And the building, I believe, is still there.
Because it's a liability.
So, continuing on though, in beautiful tiki bar. So, if you've read, or I highly recommend, if you haven't read it, you should read Jeff Perry's book, Sippin' Safari, because it tells the entire story of not only how he learned the recipes, but of the history of all these places and how the 4 Filipino bartenders mutated into like every single place in the country where all these Filipino teams, one of these guys would go and then he'd teach somebody else, but it was just all these different places. And the original people, the original like 6 or so, had some really stellar places, and one of them is this, the Mai Kai. Recently closed, but I understand it's reopening in December. This is in Fort Lauderdale, and it's Florida, so a lot of it is outdoors. This place is gorgeous. So this was Mariano Lucadine, who was the beverage director there, and this is his menu. And of course, a lot of them are Don's drinks, but he's renamed them, like Missionary's Downfall is now Missionary's Doom. The Cobra's Fang is now the Cobra's Kiss. Things of that nature. What was the Shrunken Skull? Never mind, the brain sometimes. But that's a beautiful menu. And if you go there and can take the tour, because sometimes they will take people back and they'll show them the drinks, because he's got his original bar bottles. Not all of them have a lot of booze in them, but you can see stuff here that you would not run across anywhere, like daggers, which they don't make anymore. And that was the successor to the 17-year-old Ray and Nephew and the 15-year-old Ray and Nephew that Vic used originally in the Mai Tai. The daggers was also made by Ray and Nephew, and then they stopped making daggers in 1960 and replaced it with another Ray and Nephew product, Appleton, which of course is what the current product that they have, besides the Ray and Nephew, the overproof Ray and Nephew. But the other thing that the Mai Kai created was the mystery girl. And this was a great concept. You would order the mystery drink, and someone would hit a giant gong, and out would come a server with this drink on a platter full of dry ice and just trailing through the place. And of course, everybody looks at it and goes, "I want one of those." This is marketing, and they still do it down there. But you can't keep a good idea down. So in 1961, the mystery girl shows up at the Kahiki in Columbus, Ohio. Yeah, the Kahiki was one of the most intense, insane Polynesian palaces that I ever went to. I worked there a few times as well as played there, but I also drank there. And this is an old picture of me enjoying the mystery drink. Look at that smile on that guy's face. He's enjoying this cocktail. That is one good motherfucking drink. That was 1994. I had hair back then. Unbelievable. But I'm still drinking. I am now too, so. All right, so Hawaii Mania really takes over the country in 1959 when Hawaii becomes the 50th state of these here United States. And book them, Dan. Oh yeah, book yourself a flight to Honolulu, because you might meet Elvis, because he's there making really shitty movies and singing shitty songs like Do the Clam, and there's no room to rumble in a sports car. But you know what? It's all good, clean fun, and yeah, Elvis, yeah, pop. That is a good song. Okay, and then this exotica music that started with Less Faction. Now this song is Quiet Village, with all these animal sounds, which are done by a guy, the guy named Augie Colon, who was Filipino, was the percussionist in this band, and also did all these jungle sounds. And this actually knocked Elvis off the charts in 1958. This was the #1 record in America at that time. Continuing on, Les Baxter now, he's gone to outer space with Exotica, and look, they're drinking these drinks. They're like purple and pink, and so are the ladies here, and they're enjoying that. I don't have, I drink one of those in more spacesuit. I think that would be good. Of course, it gets into adult reading. This is from my personal horror collection. That fire on the cover, that's the hottest thing in this book. It's not very good, but it was worth $1 just for that cover. Okay, so, and then we got surfers. Surf's up. Surfers didn't really drink tropical drinks or hang out at tiki bars, but they did wear these when they were surfing. And, you know, surfing started in Hawaii, so it brought more tourists to Hawaii. Everybody's going, Hawaii is, you know, fairly inexpensive to get to. It's a state now, so you don't need, you know, a passport or any vaccination proof or anything to go there, like you used to have to for going to Europe or whatever. But, and then you get there, and if you're at the airport, you can buy this book, Okoli Maluna, which means bottoms up in the Hawaiian language. And it's the same book, 2 different covers. For some reason or other, they have the goddess Kali on this one, but as a guy, and that's from Hinduism. So I'm not too sure what that's doing in Hawaii, but no matter. It's actually a pretty good book because the way they rate the drinks is this. This is the rating system for the drinks. So when I first got the book, I only drank these drinks. Yeah. I mean, look at
Oh, this is really nice. I really like this drink. Oh, this is great.
no, fuck that. This guy is like, yeah, man, yeah, this is, yeah, I dig that. Yeah. But that guy, that's my hero right there. So, you'll see me looking like that later tonight, because I am drinking a zombie for breakfast, just like all of you. Yeah. All right. So Tiki now starts getting really the same everywhere. The drinks, nobody knows how to make the drinks. They're all just kind of shitty. Kind of. And, you know, everybody has the same menus, and they're nice menus, but it's all the same. And then, you know, there was a little version of modern tiki that Don did, and this place, the South Seas, that I used to go to in Boston, you know, it sort of looks like some sort of Picasso rip, and nice little swizzle sticks there. But Steve Crane now is back in it. He's got some Kon-Tiki ports. He's in all the Sheraton hotels. The Yankee Clipper in Fort Lauderdale was, that was where the Beatles went on their first tour. That was the first time they ever had tropical drinks, which is probably why I think Ringo's been in AA for about 40 years. That might be the cause of that, but evidently they got pretty hammered there. This is up in Vancouver. These were all over the place. Just really beautiful places for the most part. Las Vegas, the Aku Aku next to the Stardust. Look at that. They tore that down. Why did they do that? The Kahiki that I talked about in Columbus, Ohio, with the 80-foot fireplace, tiki fireplace there. Right down the street here, the Royal Hawaiian, and also the Tahiti used to be here. That is unfortunately gone now, but the Royal Hawaiian still stands. Barcelona, we're in the Barcelona hotel, right? In Barcelona, there was 37 tiki bars in the 1970s. There's 3 that are there still, and the Aloha, it's just a theme today. The Aloha was the one that I actually DJ'd there about 12 years ago. Really nice spot, shitty drinks. And Trader Vic's in London that we talked about. This is the Trader Vic's in Atlanta, still there. There's the Kowloon that I talked about earlier. That sign is still there. That is all still standing. Except they made it, because of COVID, they put a drive-in movie theater in the back, so they have this huge parking lot, so you can just go and watch movies on Friday and Saturday nights there. And, oh, so this is interesting. When I was a kid, which I was at one point in my life. This was Chinatown in Boston, and this is what it looked like when I was growing up, and this is what it looks like now. I tend to think that that is better, but maybe that's just me. I like neon signs, right? So that's kind of boring. But my favorite place is here, Bob Lee's Islander. Now I want you to take a look. Look at that ceiling. Look at that carpet. Look at that. Just look at that for a minute. When I tell you that that was the only tiki bar I ever wanted to peek my brains out on acid. This is not a good idea. So my tip for you today is don't do acid, go to a tiki bar. I never did acid in a tiki bar ever again after that. Just stick with the law, right? But I turned into like the Wicked Witch of the West and looking out like, spring melting! It was not pretty. It got me out of there pretty fast. But you know, by the 1970s, Orchids of Hawaii is a company that was in the Bronx, and they're supplying every place. So any one of these restaurants you go into has just the same mugs, the same shitty syrups. You know, they have these power blenders. They've got all these powdered mixes, and everything's the same. Of course, you know, natural straw mats that won't go on fire because you really don't want the place to burn down when you're sitting there. But it gets really, really tired. The food is all the same. It's usually kind of shitty too, and the drinks suck. So it was not a good place. These places to hang out. And what happened was, it got replaced quickly in the 70s. Hunan and Sichuan food from China become popular in the United States. Everything was Cantonese before that. Rocky Aoki starts the Benihana chain of Japanese restaurants with very high showmanship, going meat and vegetables in the air and chopping them up and stuff. And he has drinks to go with it that he has in Buddhist porcelain mugs. And you know, it's just, this starts to really replace a lot of the tiki places. And then, of course, the real kick in the ass was the frozen margarita that was developed by Mariano Martinez in Dallas in 1971. And he used the Dairy Queen machine to get these drinks. And
I thought it was, so 7-Eleven's from Dallas, and the story in Dallas, that got from Dallas, is that he got it from the 7-Eleven, the slush machine. That's what we all were told in Dallas. It was a slush machine from.
I'll buy that. I read Dairy Queen, but 7-Eleven sounds good to me. Officially changed now. Mark that in your notes. 7-Eleven. Okay. Was it open from 7 until 11? Was that where it came from?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now it's 24, and it's just, it's got weird.
Yeah. They should just change it to 24. 7/24. Okay, so the end of the era comes. Don the Beachcomber closes in Hollywood in 1989, and the only thing that's left is the sign. Sad, sad, sad. We're at refreshment time. Toast to the death. A toast to Don the Beachcomber.
Salute.
What's this cocktail that we're drinking? And the Mai Tai.
That's actually that is the Mai Tai.
That's fine. What's the first one then? Zombie. Right. Okay.
All right. So
I'm waiting.
how did it get to where we're all? Why are we all here today? How did this happen? Well, I can tell you because I was there. For me personally, it starts with this band, Combustible Edison. They put on a show called the Tiki Wonder Hour in 1991 in Providence and in Boston. And it was a Las Vegas style review, except it took place in hell. And it was hosted by Satan. And had a stand-up comedian named the Suffering Bastard that came on and told really bad drinks, and there was a guy on paper mache tiki mug. And they were playing all this like 1960s music, film music, and Exotica and all this stuff, and I just thought these guys are great. And I continued to go and see them. And then one day, the leader of the band, the Millionaire, as he was called, said, well, you know, we got signed to Sub Pop, and we're putting an album out, and 2 of my guys have day jobs, and they won't go on tour. So, you play keyboards. What are you doing? I said, well, I'm on tour, too. I was working in Europe a lot, soul singer. But I said, yeah, I love you guys. I'll go. So I went on tour with them. And the rest is history. I became a full-time member after a year or so. But they actually had their record release party at a place called Luke's Luau Hut in Providence, Rhode Island. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's gone, but that was Miss Lily Banquette, the vocalist extraordinaire, and she also played drums and vibraphone. So it went pretty well. We got a call from this guy Quentin Tarantino back in 1994 saying, we love your music, we want you to score this movie that we're doing called 4 Rooms. So we scored this film. This was the theme song, Vertigo. And anybody seen this movie?
Yes.
Didn't do well when it came out, but it has become a sort of a cult film. Tim Roth is the bellboy. It continues on, but we were touring, and this whole thing about cocktails and lounge music and stuff took off pretty much because of us, and also because of this guy, Otto von Stroheim, in Venice Beach, California, started having luau parties in his backyard in 1988. He put out a magazine called Tiki News that was the first issue, a little desktop publishing thing. Otto is in the printing business. And this guy, Sven Kirsten, he's written all these books about the history of all this stuff. I'm a real collector. He's a cinematographer from Hamburg, Germany, who started working in Hollywood in the 70s and lives between both countries. And of course, this guy, Jeff Beachbum-Berry, who without him, we wouldn't be here today because he discovered the secret of the drinks. And this was the first book that he did with Otto. Cost $10 back in 1995. It was color Xerox cover. It was all desktop printing. It was hand stapled. Sells for about $200 or so nowadays on eBay. But it was phenomenal. So how did he get the drink recipes? Well, if you read Sip and Safari, you'll find out. But I can tell you the short story right now. The Tiki Tea in Los Angeles, been there since 1961. It was opened by a former, original Don the Beachcomber bartender named Ray Buin. And he had all the drinks, and he knew all the recipes. And Jeff would go in there all the time and say, "So how do you make this drink?" Rum and fruit juice. That was always the answer. And the same thing happened to me on the East Coast. I'd be asking how they make the drinks, and that was the answer you always got: rum and fruit juice, rum and fruit juice. And one day, when Ray was in his early 80s, and he said to Jeff, I don't know how much longer I'm gonna live. He wasn't sick at the time, but yeah, he was in his 80s, and he said, I just thought, the hell with it. I'll give you the recipes. So he did. And that's how we got to know what they all are now. And he said, by the way, here's the other guys that I worked with. Here's their phone numbers or addresses or what have you. Just find them, tell them I gave you my recipes, and they'll give you theirs. And that's how we accumulated all the original recipes. And got the code broken because they were all in this code. And that's what happened, and that's why we have these drinks today. So how about a nice round of applause for Jeff? And if you find yourself in New Orleans, you can go say hello to him because he owns Latitude 29 in the French Quarter, which is an incredible bar. And he's a really, really friendly guy. And just say hi. And his wife Anine is the manager there, and she'll probably seat you. So go see the bums. And of course, he's written all these books. And Shag, Josh Agel, artist who took this stuff from when he started doing design work in the mid-90s, and now he's got 2 Shag stores, one in Los Angeles and one in Palm Springs, and he's taken off quite a bit, and a really great guy as well. And Otto did the first big tiki cocktail lounge festival called the Exoticon, 95. Shag does the illustration at the Park Plaza Hotel on Wilshire Boulevard, the Miracle Mile in Los Angeles, right next to MacArthur Park. Combustible was the headliner at that. We sold 4,000 tickets in 1995 at, $12.50 at the door, 11 in advance. So Otto thought, that's good, I think I know how to do this, and he started Tiki Oasis. That was the very first one of these festivals. They just had the 20th anniversary last month out there it's in San Diego now. And it just proliferated. The Hoopty-Ra, which was actually this weekend in Fort Lauderdale, has been going since 2003. That actually started in Atlanta. And now, the swizzle sticks came back. Every place has its own swizzle stick and their own mugs. And there's more swizzle sticks. I try to collect from every single place I go to. More swizzle sticks than brains, but that's what happens in life. Martin Cake, that's Auto on Stroheim right there. Martin opened Forbidden Island in Alameda in 2006, and then he opened Smuggler's Cove in San Francisco in 2009, and Frankie's Tiki Room in Las Vegas in 2008. That was the first place to start making their own mugs. So all the stuff starts coming back, and of course the mugs are a hell of a lot better than those old Orchids of Hawaii ones that I started collecting in the 70s at flea markets and thrift shops and yard sales. Three Dots and a Dash opened in Chicago. That's a fantastic bar, and of course there's also Lost Lake there, and Tonga Hut in North Hollywood, and there's another one in Palm Springs. That was a tiki dive bar in the 50s, and then just became a dive bar, and then got brought back to being another tiki dive bar in 2005. Tiki Cat in Kansas City was one of the most beautiful ones that I've been in, but unfortunately it did not survive the pandemic, and it has gone out of business. But no matter, just go up the road to Omaha, Nebraska, where you can go to La Colona, which is an incredible place. They brought me out there to do their whole my whole shtick after Bradley, the manager there, was here at Tiki by the Sea 5 or 6 years ago, I guess it was. And Holly Pelly, which is another from Portland, another from Martin Cape. And there's a lot. The Jungle Bird is really cool out in Sacramento, and of course Pagan Idol, and we're in Zombie Village in San Francisco as well as the Smuggler's Cove, and the Valley High, which is still there. That's the Goof on the Roof, and they have a Goof on the Roof drink that comes in a Goof mug. I was just down there when I was in San Diego a couple of weeks ago. That's been there since the 50s, but of course Martin Kate as well has False Idol down there. So there's tons and tons of them all over the place. Like Dirty Dick in Paris with a friend Scotty Shooter, which is incredible. And Scotty's unbelievable.
He's the next level.
And yep, there he is. There is Scotty Shooter written down, all right. And that's I don't know who the guy on the left is, but that's Jeff Beachbum-Berry there at his place. Photobomb. Okay, he's got latitude 29, and this is the Lapu Lapu Bowl, which is the last Don the Beachcomber recipe that he found, and I turned 60. I was there for my 60th birthday party, and there was 60 ounces of booze in that, so he said, "Happy birthday, motherfucker!" I drank it. David Wonder said, "Are you gonna live to be 61?" Well, I did, so all right. And there's some more drinks there at Latitude, and I think we're getting down to the end here. Yeah, so thank you, Ernest Raymond Beaumont Gant. Let's have a round of applause for Don the Beach. Should we skip the movie?
Skip the movie.
We'll have to try to do it later. The movie's great.
Maybe later. Yeah.
Okay, yep. So I guess, yeah, there he is again, Don the Beach Show. I must have really hammered when I put the speed on that slide. Okay, so we'll skip the movie and just go. Oh, yeah, wait a minute, one more time, Plantation Run. Thank you very much. Okay, so, oh, wait a minute, you're not going to have a hangover. Why did we put this in here? All right, well, just in case you do, happy hangover. Thanks a lot. I'm Brother Cleve. I'll be hanging around. Got any questions tonight? I'm on the block. Cheers.
All right, Cleve. Entertaining as always. Thank you very much, sir. So we're gonna make a transition right in to Mr. Ryan Lotz now. So